question. This was actually a comment on one of my videos, and it says, "This goes against the soul trap or prison theory that has gained much attention. They say, how can one learn when the memory is wiped each time? No instruction, guidelines, etc. More or less we are being used as energy harvest. Any thoughts?" Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this. So if you're interested in this topic at all, just a brief summary. The idea is that the Earth is a kind of prison planet, and that reincarnation is actually sort of an illusion where when the body dies and the soul leaves the body, we are taken to some realm where we are confronted with some beings that are trying to persuade us or force us into going into embodiment again. But this supposedly isn't necessary. We could choose to get out of here right away. But these beings are trying to get us to go back into embodiment so they can milk us for our energy. So the idea is the Earth is a prison planet where we are constantly held in these infinite cycle of incarnations so that there are certain beings that can take our energy. Some call them archons. But there are also some that say this actually goes back to Gnostic teachings almost 2,000 years ago that talked about the God and the demiurge is seeking to trap us and so forth. So this is the basic idea of it. If you're interested, you can of course find videos about this. And I did that. I looked into it a little bit. So I've heard about the idea before a number of years ago, actually. So what I will say about this, the first thing that struck me when I watched these videos was they had a very peculiar vibration. I've talked about several times in my videos that over time, when you walk the spiritual path, when you resolve your psychology, you develop this ability to almost read vibration. It's not an outer thing where you go through a rational process, if this is true or false. You just read the vibration. And when I read the vibration of some of these videos, I felt immediately that they were trying to induce doubt into people's minds. And they were doing it in a peculiar way where first they are trying to make the people who watch the video seem like you are the chosen ones. You are special because you are open to this teaching. But then they introduce this doubt about what spiritual people have, or their spiritual teachers have taught for thousands of years, namely reincarnation. And there are also some that talk about how there are people who have had near-death experiences, and they have been in a realm, and they have dealt with these beings, and they didn't want to come back into their life, but they were, pressured or forced into doing so. And therefore they say that many near-death experiences, for example, they experience after the soul leaves the body, that there's a white light, and you're supposed to go into that light and interact with whoever is there, often your family members or your spiritual guides. But these videos are claiming that this is a false light, and you shouldn't go into it, and you shouldn't interact with these beings because you can bypass the whole process of reincarnation by doing something. I couldn't even figure out what they are saying that you could do instead, because it wasn't clear to me. I mean, that's another thing I read in these videos. They are making these statements without really explaining what they're saying. They're hinting, but not precisely describing it. And so what came to me as a result of watching these videos is that the main purpose here is to introduce doubt into people's minds. And I've seen this over the years. There are spiritual teachings out there. There are especially some channel teachings out there that do the same thing. They're claiming that everything you were told by spiritual teachers or growing up is wrong, but you are very special for being open to this idea, but then they still leave you without any clear view of what to replace it with. So you are in this limbo, you're in this doubt. Now, so if you look at this idea, the body dies, your soul, or what I call the four lower bodies, moves on. And are they saying, because this is what it seems like they're saying, you shouldn't go into the white light. But if you go into the white light, where are you going to go then? Because your soul has left the physical body. And the danger of this is that you become what is called a discarnate soul, who can't leave the physical plane behind. You are sort of in this no man's land where you haven't really gone anywhere. Now, back to the soul trap theory and the prison planet theory, okay? What often happens with these ideas that induce doubt in people's minds is that they're not completely wrong. They take ideas and then they twist them a little bit. And so if you think about the idea, reincarnation is an endless cycle. We are being fooled into going into incarnating so that there are beings who can milk our energy. Is there some validity to this idea? Well, there actually is, but it doesn't apply to all people. That's the thing. See, I've talked about in several of my videos that in the material world we live in, the material world is made out of energy. Energy vibrates at different levels, right? So there's simply, just like you have visible light from red to violet, the difference between the different colors is the vibration, frequency, amplitude, wavelength of the light rays. So just as they are ultraviolet rays, we can't see they are the higher vibration, they are infrared or lower vibration. It's the same thing. The entire material universe vibrates within this spectrum of frequencies. And the physical is part of this. The physical world is part of this, what we can detect with our physical senses. But there's something that's below that, and there's something that's above that. And then, of course, beyond that, it's the spiritual realm. So there is actually a part of the emotional realm, which is in spiritual teachings often called the astral plane. And this corresponds to, and I've talked about this in several videos, this actually corresponds to what many people have seen as hell, where there's this, there are different levels of it, but there's this very intense energy, very hot, there are beings there who are torturing souls and this and that. So in the emotional realm, there is this astral plane, and there are beings there, they don't have a physical body. They are seeking to entrap people. And why are they doing this? Because, as I've explained in several videos, the world exists only because it's created out of a stream of energy that comes from the spiritual realm and is gradually lowered into vibration. But if a being becomes selfish and is willing to hurt other people, the stream of energy that comes from its higher self is going to be gradually reduced, so it's only just a trickle to keep the being conscious. And that means that there are beings in this lower emotional realm, this astral plane, that are cut off from the flow of light that is upholding all of us. And therefore, in order to sustain themselves and expand their power, they have to steal energy from others. And they do this in various ways by creating soul traps, you might call it. An obvious example of this is addiction. Another is crime, selfishness, self-centeredness, mental illnesses, what we call mental illnesses, for example. So if you look at humankind as a whole, there are some people who over past lifetimes have become so selfish, they've gone to the lowest levels of consciousness you can be in on earth. And when their souls leave the physical body, they go to this astral plane. Now, some of them get stuck there for quite a while, but others, they return to embodiment and they come back with much the same level of consciousness they had before. They just repeat the same patterns, crime, selfishness, self-centeredness, addiction, whatever it is. In their next lifetime, when the body dies, they go back into the astral plane. And they are in a loop. They can't get out of it. And the reason why they can't get out of it is not that they are forced by these beings in the astral plane. It's because they are not willing to take responsibility for themselves and look at what do I need to change in my consciousness in order to be free of this? But for a practical purposes, these souls are trapped in a loop, and they just go back to embodiment with the same consciousness they had when they left. They don't make any progress in between. Sometimes they can even deteriorate in between, because these beings in the astral plane, they will torture people and torture their souls so they can actually come back being even worse off. So there are beings who are in a downward spiral like that. Now they are also, so you can say that these beings, yes, they are trapped in a loop. The thing is though, they are not receiving that much light from the spiritual realm. So there isn't a whole lot of energy that these beings in these hellish realms can steal from them. There just isn't so much. And so now you can look at the majority of people on the planet, a very large group of people on the planet. They are not going to these hellish realms in between embodiments. They are going to the higher emotional realm or even the mental realm. And in those mental realms, they also encounter beings that are there. And there are beings in the higher emotional and in the mental realm who are sort of stuck there. They haven't moved on to, for example, ascending, becoming ascended masters. So they also need to steal energy from people. Now they don't do it by these obvious torturing people. They do it by sort of deceiving people and making them, for example, believe that they can't really change themselves, they can't really escape the cycle they're in, they have limitations as human beings. So what you see in many people, and as spiritual people, if you're a spiritual person, you can probably see this in your family members, is that throughout a lifetime, they don't really change their consciousness much. It's the typical pattern for these people is that throughout childhood, they're sort of taking in ideas. They might have a little bit of questions here, but then they come to the point where now they're adults, and now their attitude to life, their view of life, their view of themselves is pretty much set. And now they live the rest of their lives with that worldview without ever questioning it. It's so different from those of us who are spiritual people. We always had questions and we kept looking for answers. That's why we found the spiritual path. So most people on earth are sort of, again, stuck in a loop, because they leave the body, they go to either the emotional realm or the mental realm, they have certain experiences there, but they don't really transcend their level of consciousness, so they come back with the same level of consciousness, live another lifetime that's almost like the previous one, and maybe they make progress over time, but it's very slow. So in a sense, you could also say that these people, they are stuck in a loop. There are these beings in the mental and emotional realm that are taking some of their energy, but they're not really doing it maliciously. They actually think they're helping these people. And so, but does that mean that the Earth is a prison planet? Well, it depends on how you interpret this. It does not mean that the Earth was created as a prison planet, and that it was deliberately designed by some malevolent beings to be a prison planet. Because what is actually happening on Earth is, as I've explained in a number of videos, that Earth is an unnatural planet, which means that most of the people who embody on it haven't taken full responsibility for themselves. And that means they are projecting that their state of mind, their outer physical situation depends on factors outside themselves, outside their control. This is what they're projecting out. That's why you see substantial part of the people in the world are living in dictatorial countries, for example, where they want the dictator to make decisions for them because they don't want to make decisions for themselves. And this is part of what makes them stuck in a loop. Now, the other thing that makes people stuck in a loop is, of course, what traditionally in spiritual teachings has been called karma. So people take certain actions, self-centered, selfish actions. It may not be violent actions, killing or people or stealing from people or something like that, but they are totally focused on themselves. And Therefore, their karma mandates that they have to come back into embodiment. If we go back to what I said, that there are some that claim that near-death experiences they have experienced leaving the body, and they didn't want to come back into the body, but they were told they had to. And the same thing when people actually, when the body completely dies, it's not a near-death experience, but the body is dying, they move on. Also those who are told they have to come back into the next embodiment. But this is not because they're some malevolent beings. It's actually because of the karma, which is the result of their own choices. So there are certain types of karma that you can only overcome by being in physical embodiment. And part of the purpose of an unnatural planet is really, it's what I call the school of hard knocks, because you keep having the same experiences over and over again from lifetime to lifetime, and they gradually become harder and harder because you're making more and more karma. And this goes on until you've had enough of it. The alternative to the school of hard knocks is, of course, the school of higher awareness, where you receive or you study outer teachings and you receive directions from within, from your higher self, from the ascended masters, so you can transcend your level of consciousness, so you're not repeating the same karma. This means that as spiritual people, we are in an upward spiral. Many of these people are in a downward spiral. It's getting worse and worse, or some even almost tread water between embodiments. But as spiritual people, we are in an upward spiral. We may still have to come back into embodiment to work out certain karma, or rather certain psychology. But it's not something that's forced upon us from without. It's the result of our own choices from past lifetimes. And it's very important to realize this, because the whole prison planet theory and these videos that are out there, they have this effect, which I've seen before. There are teachings out there that they make you doubt everything you were told, and make you think this theory is much more sophisticated than what you're told, and you're very special for considering the theory or believing in it, but they don't give you any way to get beyond it. So the theory makes you stuck in another loop than what it claims that you are stuck in. And this is actually what I have, in some videos where I've talked about how there are these fallen beings, dark forces, are trying to deceive us. This is what I call serpentine logic, or the serpentine mindset. You have the situation in the Old Testament in Genesis, where Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and they have been told there's one fruit they're not allowed to eat of, and then the serpent is there telling Eve, they've been told they are going to die if they eat of the fruit. And the serpent says, "Thou shalt not surely die." And thereby he puts doubt in their minds. And this is the doubt that causes people to be stuck or to go into a downward spiral. And so what I'm saying is that a theory that puts doubt in your mind rather than helping you overcome the doubt by going within and getting directions from within, it's not a constructive theory. It's not seeking to help you grow. It's deliberately created to put doubt in your mind. And I've seen over the years, the many, many years I've been on the spiritual path, how, let's put it this way, we have been brought up in our enlightened, awakened, sophisticated scientific societies to close our minds to a lot of ideas. So we have the churches, for example, the Christian church, don't consider any new ideas, anything beyond church doctrine, because it's all of the devil. Then we have scientific materialism says, don't consider any religious or spiritual ideas, it's all superstition, it's all nonsense. So we're actually brought up to close our minds to ideas beyond what we are told is the truth. Now, as spiritual people, we can't live our lives that way. So we come to a point where we open ourselves to some ideas beyond what we were told. And that's when we discover there's a spiritual side to life. But what happens to most of us as a result of this, some call it an awakening, is that we now open our minds to everything that's out there. And I've seen this over the years, how spiritual people, They first find a spiritual path, they're so eager, and now they're open. Oh, there's this idea, there's that idea. And the thing is, what I'm saying is, there are many of these ideas out there that are deliberately put out there to confuse and overwhelm spiritual people. And either take us into a false path or just kind of paralyze us by, we don't know what to believe or what to do, or there's so many things pulling on us that we scatter ourselves. We do a little bit of this, we do a little bit of that, we go here, we go there, we study this teaching, that teaching. But it all gets so overwhelming, we don't know what to believe. And so what usually, some people get so overwhelmed they leave the spiritual path altogether. Others get stuck for a while in this limbo state where they're open to everything, and they have this attitude, oh, it's all good. So all of these ideas are good, so we should look a little bit here, we should look a bit there. But what happens to many people is that after some time, we begin to become more mature, we begin to develop what I call discernment, where we can just sort of sense, maybe these ideas are a little too far out. So if I'm to summarize what I'm trying to say here about this prison planet theory, there is some reality to it, in the sense that some people are stuck in a loop. But this is not because some malevolent beings did this. Yes, there are malevolent beings who are trying to keep people stuck in the loop, but it's people's own choices. Now, in many cases, they were misled by what I call these fallen beings into creating this spiral. But still, it's the result of people's own choices. And yes, there are these beings who are trying to keep people in a loop, but it's really because people don't want to take responsibility for themselves, make their own choices. And the only way out of it is to take responsibility, start making our own choices, start strengthening our intuition. And that's what the spiritual path is all about, of course. And so, beyond these people who have not taken responsibility for themselves, there are spiritual people and many other people who are not really open to the spiritual path, but there are many people who have started to take responsibility for themselves. And once you take responsibility for yourself, you're not stuck in a loop anymore. And when you become more discerning, when you become aware of the need, for example, to invoke spiritual protection, they can't steal your energy. I have a whole playlist on Spiritual Toolbox where I talk about the need to invoke spiritual protection from the Ascended Masters to seal your energy field from projections. You can also invoke an Elohim called Astrea to cut you free from your ties to lower forces, and you can invoke violet flame energy to consume the fear-based energy in your energy field. That makes you vulnerable to this pull. So once you do that, they can't steal your energy. And so that's when you start the upward path. And the upward spiritual path, the gradual upward path, that's the way out of Earth. That's the way to ascend, as I talk about in many videos. And there is no shortcut there. There is no shortcut. It's not like there's some magical potion or some spiritual practice or some shift in consciousness that's instantly going to propel you out of it. It just takes time because you have created these structures in your subconscious mind. I call them subconscious selves or unresolved psychology. And you have to uncreate it, and that's how you learn, that's how you grow. So, for some people, Earth could be said to be a prison planet, but they were not forced into it, and they have a way out. But for many people, you can see it in the modern world, you can see it among spiritual people, the Earth is not a prison planet. It's a platform for our growth in consciousness. And even though the Earth is a dense planet, what I call an unnatural planet, and if you want to understand this concept, watch my video about how the world was created, where I explain this about unnatural planets. And it's more difficult to make spiritual progress here, but that also means that the spiritual progress we do make, it takes us to a higher level of consciousness by meeting these challenges. So the Earth is an opportunity for growth. A unique opportunity for growth. It has some difficult aspects, but once you begin to understand this and be able to discern between what is what's meant to fool you and what's meant to liberate you, you can really make very quick progress. And just to summarize, there are spiritual ideas that are out there that are meant to fool you, slow your progress, and they have certain elements. They seek to confuse you, make you doubt what other spiritual teachings say, but make you feel very sophisticated because you're willing to consider these theories. But then they leave you kind of hanging without any clear way out of it. They may hint at certain things, so many people end up feeling disempowered or paranoid. For example, I looked at a message board where people were talking about this soul trap theory, and there was one person that made a remark that, yeah, she knew several people who believed in soul trap theory, but they all became more and more paranoid. And that's a sign that you are messing with ideas here that are messing with your mind. And you need to then just let it go and find some spiritual teaching that resonates with you, follow that teaching, follow the spiritual practice until you feel like you have increased your intuition, you can get directions from within. And quite frankly, it's better to follow a spiritual guru, even an outer guru, an outer teaching that talks about spiritual growth and resolving psychology, than it is to follow some of these theories. I mean, some of these theories are just so vague, imprecise, there's so much fluff. I mean, you can learn to recognize when a theory is really catering to your ego's need to feel special, because the ego has a huge need to feel special, as I talk about in my talks about ego illusions, ego games. And there are some theories out there that you can very quickly recognize they are seeking to cater to that need to feel special. You are so special because you're following this teaching. So you can avoid those kind of theories, find one that talks about there is a spiritual path, but it requires work. It's not just a matter of snapping your fingers.